Hey, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast with your host, Dominick Lorenz. And it's a new year. Happy 2023, the first podcast of the new year. And my co-host, David Goodkind, in the house. David, what's up?
Not much. I'm trying to digress after yesterday's news. Not doing too hot about that, but everything else is pretty good. So can't complain too much.
Yeah, David and I, we were planning on the first episode of 2023 to be primarily about the Anaheim Ducks. Even though the Ducks season has not gone to fruition at all, there has been some good moments, a lot of bad, but we thought we'd finally sit down and dive into the first half of the Ducks season. Well, Angels owner, and I hate to say that phrase, but Angels owner Arte Moreno decided to have different plans. We baited and switched, and this episode is now going to be dedicated to the news that we found out yesterday about Arte Moreno pulling the offers off the table, and he will remain the owner of the Angels. Now, before we get into all that, don't forget, fans, to like, comment, and subscribe here on this video on YouTube. And of course, you can find everything Katella Chronicles on our website, katellachronicles.wordpress.com, as well as on Twitter and Instagram at Katella_CHRON. David, Arte Moreno is still the owner of the Angels after months of conversation of who will take over, when will Arte sell, what will the price tag be, and what will that new regime bring to the Angels franchise. There is no regime. As the title of this podcast will be, we've been buttercupped again.
Yep. The
What
biggest
are your
buttercup.
biggest buttercup of all time? David, initial thoughts. What is just your initial gut reaction from everything that came out yesterday?
Doom, pessimism, worst case scenario. The thing that couldn't happen happened. It's in terms of trying to keep it like the levity. The worst things that could happen within sports happened. It's just there's no silver lining with this news yesterday, and so yeah, it's been really tough.
It's very hard. It's very hard to think of this one because we all know how I would say probably 95+% of Angel fans feel. Like you said, it's doomsday. It's unbelievable that we have to go through this again. I mentioned this last time while I was on Instagram Live with our buddies at Halos in the Infield. Arte Moreno dangled the carrot, gave us something shiny, gave us a glimmer of hope, and you and I both agreed on this from the very beginning. We were happy that he was selling, but there was still a little piece of us saying, what if he bait and switches at the last moment?
Yeah.
And he ended up doing that. Was it at the last possible second? No, because there was no technically formal offers put on the table. I know, as we found out today from Sam Blum, there was 5 potential suitors that were gearing up, and this pretty much could have been a bidding war, $2.5 billion, if not more, if it got into the $3 billion range. So this would have been a massive sell and price tag on this organization, but Arte pulls the plug on it, still has love in his heart for this organization. You know, the way he treats the minor league system, the players, the fans, the stadium, all the backdoor deals, the list can go on. And I know, David, you're going to get into some of that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
The 1 + 1 does not equal 2 in this situation at all. I really don't know how we can go further in this situation.
I'm curious to see how the story continues to develop, because I'm calling BS on I love the team too much. There has to be something else to this. Or he's just an idiot. That's that's also a possibility, because look at it this way. It's like, if you really believe that you're building a contender and you're here to win a World Series, you let all the big free agents go by. The Angels only signed short-term deals this offseason with the anticipation the new owner would come in and there'd be a regime change. And we understood that, and we said, that's fine. But that's not happening anymore. So you hamstring yourself in that regard. And then he pulls that asinine line in his statement yesterday, because of course he doesn't do a public appearance, because he's not he's too much of a coward to talk to the media. And he says, "Oh well, we've set a historic record in franchise payroll, right? He hasn't crossed the luxury tax. Indications are is that he won't this offseason. It's a bunch of bull. It's the best way I can put it. I'm furious. I know my father, including, is one of the people. I know attendance is probably going to drop drastically this season. My father is not doing season tickets for the first time in like 20 some odd years.
Wow.
I've been personally boycotting the team since last season, and I know after the sale, a lot of people asked me if I was going to go back, and I said no because this could happen, and I didn't want to reward Artie. And I don't know what he's playing at, because let's say Ohtani does leave, that value is now going to plummet. He's not going to get the same offers that he got this offseason if Ohtani leaves and he decides to sell again and actually go through with it. The value of the franchise dips. So that goes back to my statement of him being stupid. This is a pretty good time to sell if he's smart about it, but he could lose Ohtani, and then you can knock $500 million off that asking price right there. I'm furious. I'm a little, I don't know if confused is the right word, but flabbergasted, just beside myself at the moment. And I feel for diehard Angel fans out there like myself. Like, it's really tough. And this at this point, it's pushed me to the part where I just want nothing to do with the team. And it's really heartbreaking. I've been a fan for 30 years now. And to say, I don't want to watch the team, I don't want to go to the games, I don't want to support this ownership, and to take my fandom elsewhere, or just be a fan of the game for a while until Artie's either retired, dead, or sells, is really heartbreaking. That's one thing I grew up with that I'm saying I just morally can't condone anymore, So it's just been a rough 24 hours. I think that's the best way to sum all that up.
Absolutely. And the thing that I try to conceive the most over the last, I would say now 24 hours since the news broke, for those diehard Angel fans, it feels like a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword, because Arte Moreno's back. We're strapped with that. Now the big question becomes, what is going to happen with Shohei Ohtani? Who cares about any other free agent? Whatever the Angels have done this offseason with Gio Urshela, Hunter Renfroe, Tyler Anderson. Before this announcement yesterday, I think we were all in this similar thinking that the Angels are better than where they were last year,
right?
Which is a good direction. Manassian has done a very good job of addressing the depth, which is something that you specifically really wanted the team to do last offseason. So there were some steps in the right direction. But now the big question is, what is going to happen with Shohei Ohtani? Is he a $500 million man? Is he only $300 million with a lot of opt-outs? You name it, from A to Z. This is going to be the pinnacle question from now until whenever he resigns or gets traded or says, adios, I'm going to another team. You're going to hamstring the franchise in one way. If you sign him to, let's say, 10 years, $500 million, you're going to hamstring the franchise, because we already know Artie does not open the pocketbook deeply, and you're not going to be able to get major pieces in the future. You're going to have Trout, you're going to have Ohtani, and then you're going to have to figure it out the rest of the way.
It'll be more of the same.
Yes, correct. And
we've already seen what to expect.
Exactly. If the Angels don't retain Shohei Ohtani, he gets traded or leaves via free agency, you're going to have the public storming at the gates. You're going to lose a hell of a lot of revenue in marketing, because he is a two-way insane player who comes from a foreign country, who brings in a huge demographic, not only to the team, but to Major League Baseball in general. So you're going to have people storming the gates, and you're going to have to find a way to replace that on your roster. He is a 2-in-1 player. He hits and he pitches both at all-star MVP levels at both sides of the field. Tell me where in the market you can get somebody like that.
Brett Phillips. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Brett Phillips, you never know. He could be the next sensation. We thought that with Jared Walsh when he did in the minors, but there is no conceivable way to replace Shohei Ohtani. And that's incredibly hard to say, because guess what? We have a future Hall of Famer in Mike Trout in center field, but guess what? Trout doesn't pitch. That's how crazy this scenario is setting up to be. We talked about this last night with our buddies at Halos in the Infield. What would it take to get Arte in the right direction of maybe getting looked at in more of a positive manner than a negative manner? I know he will never be the Messiah, like he'll be 100% in our good graces. There's always going to be negatives attached to Arte Moreno. But what are a few things he could do to at least show us a glimmer of hope that there's positivity with his ownership?
First and foremost, take care of the minor leaguers. Spearhead that. Be like at the forefront of this is what the minor league system should be. We take care of our players. We invest in development. We are the gold standard. Right now, they are probably the worst in baseball in terms of accommodations, scouting development, and just basic human decency. So that's, for me, that's where I'd like him to start. I'd like to see more involvement into the community, and I don't mean defrauding the city of Anaheim. I mean like actual humanitarianism. A good example is across the street. The Samuelis are really good at this. They are very involved in the community, and they're very generous with their time. I would like to see more of that from Arte. In terms of the major league club, you got to cross that tax threshold. And it's not just for the one big star. You got to go get a bunch of really good players. And this offseason would have been a good start with that. And credit, I credit Perry Manassian 100% with what they've done. And I give no credit to Arte. If he wants to change that perception, he can start now, but he's still got, you can't do that in one off season. He's still got a long way to go. You make public appearances for once and talk about baseball and talk about the team, talk about the sale and how it fell apart. Be honest.
We're still waiting on last year's spring training press conference, and we're now in 2023 now.
And and this is all stuff that I don't expect to happen. I don't expect one of these things to happen. I expected all of it to happen with the new owner, which breaks my heart saying, but these are bare minimums. Like, I'm not asking for the world here.
We're not asking to try to multiply Shohei, find the next 10 Shohei Ohtanis and sign them and win 10 championships in 10 years. We're not asking for that.
And then while he's doing this, he's gonna have to deal with litigation. He's getting sued. He's getting sued by those Dominican players. He's still dealing with the Skaggs tragedy. And now he's got the FBI to worry about with the Anaheim deal. It's just a giant mess. I don't expect anything to change. I think maybe he saw Manassian put together a competitive roster, which I think we can agree that Angels should be at least competitive. And I guess got cold feet, but it's so simple. There are good owners in sports. Just do what they do. Or you can become like the Detroit Tigers and start to understand your mortality and then start rushing the process to get really good and go for a couple World Series. That's more likely to me in any scenario. I don't think he's going to have a change of heart and start practicing like a non-criminal.
It's hard to change those habits sometimes.
Yeah. It's do the bare minimum, and he hasn't done the bare minimum in over a decade. So it's like asking an old dog to learn new tricks. We all see it. I'm sure you agree with most of the points I brought up of what he could do to be better. But
yeah,
if it's easy stuff. If he could have done it already, he would have.
Correct. I think in the grand scheme of things, 100% right. We're asking for bare minimum. Respect the players, respect the city, respect the organization, respect the city of Anaheim and the stadium that you're in. The big question to me is, because this kind of came out of nowhere, we thought for months he was selling, and then he got cold feet, bait and switch. I want to know, and again, everything is hindsight 2020. We won't know this specific answer unless somebody says it or a couple years down the line. because of this decision, now let's go back in the past from the day the season ended to the day before yesterday when the news came out. All the moves that have been made, which includes extending manager Phil Nevin for 1 year as a placeholder at the time we thought. Then you got the Hunter Renfroe trade, who only has 1 year left on a contract. Gio Urshela, 1 year left. Brett Phillips, a 1 year contract. You did give Brandon Drury 2 years, so that's something different. And then, even though this is coming out today, they're looking at some left-handed relievers, possibly Andrew Chafin, who, you know me, I've been on the board for him for the last 2+ years.
Right.
So hopefully they get that done. But all these moves that have happened, and including the new coaching staff, the new hitting coach and assistant pitching coach, would these moves still have happened if Arte never announced to sell? Do they go after Correa? Does it change the complexion of the offseason through the eyes of general manager Perry Manassian? I want to see if when Manassian got the news, on a scale of 1 to 10, how blindsided was he? And maybe thinking back, well, if I knew this, I would have done 10 maybe different things at this point.
Maybe go get the big shortstop, or maybe Evaldi takes the team more seriously. And you can go get a pitcher on multiple years. The Angels are having a nice offseason. I don't know if I was convinced that they were a playoff team. They are a playoff team with what they've built, but they undoubtedly improved. There's still places they need to improve. Like I would like more pitching depth this time around. But they were kind of doing the right things, and they were definitely doing the right things in a selling year. Now I would give their offseason an F because they left a lot on the table. And if they extended Ohtani, then I would only cap it at a C because you still have Ohtani, but now we have Arte Moreno. So you're screwed for next year's offseason and adding anything, or the year after, or whatever. So there's no win here. And there could have been, I mean, they sell, it's an A of an offseason. You get a new owner. That's the biggest upgrade you can have, especially with our staff. I've been pretty vocal about how, yeah, it'd be nice if they're good this season, but it's important that they bring in a new owner or new ownership group, and better days are on the horizon. And that was my whole messaging. It's like, we have to think long-term. Long-term is now worse than next year.
Yeah. Culture.
So it's
culture, I think, is a real key word in what you're talking about. A new ownership would have brought a new culture, a new feel, just a new breath of fresh air. Regardless if they did the exact same things as Arte Moreno, at least it's a different face and a different, person or group that would have come in and put their stamp on the Angels at that point.
There's still the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim culture now. There's no way around it, and it's not a good culture. But yeah, to your original point, I do believe the offseason would have been different. I still think they made smart moves. I still don't regret really any of the moves they've made. But maybe they give extra years. Maybe they work an extension out at some point, or maybe the Ohtani talks start immediately after the season ends. At the basic level, they didn't have the full pool of free agents to look at. They couldn't have every asset at their wayside or whatever. They limited themselves, and now we're late in free agency where they can really do stuff. They can still make trades and whatnot, but he really kind of screwed over the front office. I don't think there's any doubt to that. They're definitely creative, and I'm sure they would have liked the extra time.
It's very interesting because if he maybe made this decision at the onset, maybe right before the winter meetings, even after a few moves had happened, Tyler Anderson, Hunter Renfroe, Gio Urshela, and then the winter meetings happened, you're sitting there and saying, okay, maybe we approach the winter meetings differently. We talk to other GMs, maybe something comes to fruition. Who knows what that situation entails? Now, looking back on it, that point is moot. But in the grand scheme of things, you're looking at this as Arte Moreno got cold feet, and the Angels, because of his indiscretions and cold feet personality, is going to hamstring the franchise in now another way. Everything comes back to, it's just taking us down a notch and a notch. And this is no disrespect to anybody on the 25-man roster that's on the field. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Jared Walsh, they have a job to do. I have nothing
Sure.
but love for those players because regardless of what's going around in the front office, there's 162 games you got to play regardless if there's noise or everything is perfect and sunshine and rainbows. But you do have to take into consideration how the players must feel in this case, because I'm going to guarantee, without having any sources or any knowledge, not every single person in the Angels organization from low A to Major League Baseball is in love with Arte Moreno. And probably some of them would have said, okay, a new owner, and we're fine with that. And who knows if that's Mike Trout, if that's Shohei Ohtani, if that's a 19-year-old that just signed a year and a half ago and is playing at low A Inland Empire. We have no idea who those players are. But it still brings up the conversation. Will the players play out for this owner? I think it's hard to say.
I think they will, but for how much longer? Because you like you said, the carrot on the stick is a pretty good analogy. It's like, all right, now they've maybe some of them moved on, and then you take that away from them. That could create animosity. That could create angst, and that's where we start going into that theory.
And as we talk about, the biggest news after this is going to be what's going on with Shohei Ohtani. Right now, with the news that Moreno's back, or Moreno never left, regardless if you're a pessimist or an optimist, what are the chances, give me a percentage, that Ohtani actually stays with the Angels?
45% is my leaning. I would say 50-50 just because he's a good guy, seems loyal. But he's going to get that big contract anywhere. It's kind of a preference of where he wants to play. And I still maintain that the Dodgers are the best spot for him because he gets to stay in Southern California, may not even have to move, gets to make probably close to $500 million, if not more, and then play for a World Series contender every single year. And you get to keep the universal DH. For me, if I were him, I would be jumping at the Dodgers, see Angels. I don't have to change my life too much and I get to go win. That sounds great. I think if the Angels make the playoffs, that 45 probably jumps up to like 65 or 75, maybe even more. I think if they make the playoffs, that changes everything. But that's no, and like you said, no offense to the players. I think this is a much better team than last year, and I don't think we're going to see like a 10+ game losing streak out of them. But there are a lot of really good teams in the American League, and you're putting a lot of weight on the Angels making the playoffs, and then maybe they have to make the playoffs and then show something. You can't just lose a wild card game or whatever. And it's tricky. It's especially, with my opinion, the perfect situation out in Los Angeles, Chavez Ravine.
For me, I'm kind of along the same lines, like 50-50, 60-40, 40 being, he stays, 60 he leaves. It's in that range. The reason why I say this, the thing that worries me the most, and because the Angels get Buttercupped so often, and it's just the way that we get to live our lives as Halo fans, there's a perfect storm coming, potentially. It's the combination of, if Ohtani is playing extremely well like he has the last 2 years, if you couple that with regardless of how the season starts, if the Angels are still mediocre, teetering halfway through the season, then you couple it with the third option of injuries or, the wacky factor, as we call it, Trout goes down and the team suffers, or pitching happens, or a manager gets fired, something wacky happens. The perfect storm is going to lead to potentially a Shohei Ohtani trade at the trade deadline, because the Angels are going to, if the Angels know, I would say by sometime in June, the direction if the season's in a positive way or a negative way, they might get calls of, hey, time to trade Ohtani to a contender.
Well, they will for sure.
And I think this year, if the Angels do get into that precarious spot where they're not winning and Ohtani is playing at an extremely high level, they're going to have no choice but to trade him, because he's going to say, I don't want to extend here if we're going to keep losing. So even if he plays poorly, Shohei Ohtani, and the Angels are still not playing well. You're screwed that way. The only way, the perfect storm way of Ohtani probably staying is if A, you reach an extension before opening day.
Right.
And that might be a little bit hard. He is in Arizona right now. He's prepping, but he's got the World Baseball Classic to think about right now. So his attention is there. So really, you know what the window is for Ohtani to sign, or I should say, extend with the Angels before opening day? Would probably be between now and the middle of February when everybody reports. After that, you have maybe about a week and a half between the end of the World Baseball Classic and opening day. So really,
And why would he?
Yeah, and you have about
He has
three.
no incentive to do it.
Yeah, he doesn't have the incentive. The Angels are now have to be. He's on his heels. The Angels got to play offense now, and you probably have in the range of 3 legit weeks before opening day to get something done, or at least start the conversation, start negotiations, and if it lasts throughout the season. But again, by June 1, we're really going to know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's,
yeah, I agree.
It's really difficult to say because let's, as fans as we are, if Ohtani leaves, nothing against the player, I wouldn't blame him one bit. But that's going to be just another wrinkle and a dark mark with this Angels organization that you let somebody like him go.
And now we're in the position that we weren't in yesterday. It's like with Moreno as the owner, do you want Ohtani to stay? I mean, of course you want the player, but Moreno won't spend what's necessary to put the pieces around him. Ohtani may get better on the mound, but he's probably due to regress at the plate at some point. So he'll be worth his next contract because of marketing, but maybe not so much as a hitter or pitcher or whatever on-field production. So that's valid to talk about. There's a lot of moving parts here. All of a sudden, a couple days ago, you extend Ohtani because you assume the new owner is going to come in and spin out the ass, essentially, right? He or she or they are obviously spending close to $3 billion, so they're ready to spend and make this team what it should be. Moreno obviously is not. So keeping Ohtani, then he gets his attendance numbers that he wants to make his profit, but the team continues to be what it is. It's a rock and a hard place is the best way to put it, I guess. Personally, I believe that the fan outcry, I don't think it will be this season, but let's go like 3 years down the road. I think there will be a pushback on Moreno. I think maybe that's what scared him into selling in the first place or thinking about selling. He clearly wasn't liked. It's clearly known. It's clearly made public by the fans. The media makes it known. That's probably also why he doesn't talk to them, because he knows he's going to get tough questions. So I think he'll get scared into selling eventually. It just really sucks that it's right now during a pivotal moment in this franchise's history with the Ohtani free agency coming up.
And that's where I mean every time. It's just a new way to get Buttercupped. It's the way of, like we thought, like I said, 2 years or last off season was going to be the off season where we figured it out, and April and May went well, and then the big losing streak, and that took a turn for the worse. The year before that, Rendon's, after COVID, we're coming out of COVID, we feel pretty good. Rendon gets hurt, Trout's out for a majority of the year. There's just always something that just you think, and then the bottom drops out from under you. The biggest thing I feel reading, the fans' comments on social media, Instagram, Twitter, the majority of people, as I've said already, are upset, and rightfully so. And the next thing I want to talk about is with the media. You have a lot of people affiliated with this Angels organization. For example, Roger Lodge, Trent Rush, a lot of the big brass in the front office that are spearheads on social media that are essentially defending this and saying that, hey, we got to have love for the organization. You got to just roll with it, and Artie's going to take us to the promised land. I will say this. Here's the disclaimer for this portion of the discussion. They have to do that because
they get to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Exactly. So, if Roger Lodge on his show went out and said essentially F Arte Moreno and this is stupid, within a half hour, his backup would be coming into the show after a commercial break. Trent Rush says something bad. all of his shows on AM 830 and the post-game show, everything gets ripped away from him. Yes, we all have to be nice to our bosses and be a little politically correct. I understand. So I don't fault them horribly on that. I get it from a media perspective. But to the same token, you can't take it to a new extreme and not listen to everybody else. You can't go out on social media and tell people, be honest and let me know what you think. But then when everybody responds, oh, no, that's not what happens. This is okay. It's fine. It's almost like there's an addict or an alcoholic there, and it's an enabling factor.
Here's the thing, and it's something our parents always tell us. It's if you're compromised in the way like Roger Lodge or Trent Rush or any employee of Arte Moreno is, it is not illegal to stay quiet on the topic, not voice an opinion. Just, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to talk about it. And I understand he could talk about it in the show. I didn't listen, but I'm sure he didn't take many calls on it, if any. I know there was complications. I think that's the nice way of putting it. Last season with callers and the Sports Lodge and Arte Moreno. And yeah, I get where Roger's coming from. If he has a nice cushy job, he's had it for quite a while now, and it was in jeopardy with the new owner coming in. We don't know what's going to happen with the radio station, which is also owned by Arte Moreno, and all the employees there. I get it. Like you said, there's a level of humanity. I understand. But if my boss sucks as hard as Arte Moreno, I'm probably not going to voice an opinion about it. I'm probably going to stay quiet. I'm going to use my constitutional right.
Plead the fifth.
Use my constitutional right to plead the fifth and be quiet. And then I'll do a little, BS protecting of him on my radio show for 5 minutes or whatever, and say, you have to be optimistic, and then maybe hype up Perry Manassian's job this season. Spin it. I get that. Like, he's not Roger Lodge and those people. They're not real journalists. They're entertainers. But you're stoking the fire. Read the room and understand you don't always have to talk. Your opinion doesn't always have to be heard. I'm a big believer in that.
100%. And the thing I found was a lot of people, there was a lot of people that are essentially content with Arte Moreno sticking around and being owners, and other Angels blog sites are content, some are not, and there's battles on social media about it. For me, for those who are happy, I don't want to say anybody's probably happy, but for the majority who are content with the situation that unfolded yesterday, why? That would be my number one question, because
are you like under 20? Do you not remember the World Series? Do you not remember the Vlad Guerrero years where we were just kicking ass and dominant? You get a taste of that. It's hard to give that up.
Exactly. And you're sitting there saying, everybody's going to be laughing when in 2023, Arte Moreno's getting in a champagne shower at Angel Stadium after game whatever of the World Series. It's like, come on now. You gotta have enough awareness and enough wherewithal to see the writing on the wall a little bit. We all like to be optimistic. We all like to be at least a little halo honky every once in a while. Oh, Ohtani's going to hit 50 home runs and Trout's going to be MVP because he's going to have those competitive juices flying at the World Baseball Classic, and he's going to bring that into the regular season. Like, we can all be honks about that. But when it comes to the bigger picture items, you have to have some sort of dose of reality. I'm not trying to be a vibe killer here.
No, you're absolutely right. Without reality, how are you supposed to get better? How are you supposed to improve, right?
The more you kind of give hot air to somebody, they're going to keep thinking that's the truth and that's what's going on. And I think that's the problem. The bigger picture problem with the Angels organization, I feel Arte Moreno is one of those type owners that I don't want to say he strokes the ego, but he kind of comforts everybody by saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's just a blip in the road. We're going to get through this. I will find a way to get us through it. And then he goes home and just sits and watches Netflix and tries to take credit for everybody else's work. I've said this for a long time. Not Perry Manassian. Manassian has to deal with this, but Arte Moreno is kind of that project mentality owner. He wants to be the guy, when you open up the definition of amazing owners that did something different with their team, he wants to be the owner that revitalizes careers. And come to Anaheim, he tried doing it with Tim Lincecum, Trevor Cahill, Julio Teheran, Matt Harvey. You name all these guys that he tried projecting, thinking they could revitalize it, didn't work. Failed minor league guys. And I hate to say it, it's still happening right now with players like Joe Adell. Until I want him to prove me wrong so bad, I salivate at the day when Adell can produce. I want people to come at me and say, you were wrong, because I would rather have that than saying I was right and he failed.
Right.
And I feel that's been a lot of Arte Moreno's ownership, at least. I don't know when, 2009 was a very high year for the Angels. They had a little dip between 10 and 13. There was a couple good years. 2014 was, a lot of people say, was a great year. And in the grand scheme of things, from 2010 until now, 2014 was a complete blip in the road, because that's been our best season in our last dozen years. So when you take it the last decade plus for the Angels organization, it has not been smooth sailing. The on the field, off the field issues that have happened. How can you be content? Because if the first half of his tenure was great and competitive, the last half of the tenure hasn't been great. What should we expect in the next segment? Because as he said in his statement, I'm the Angels owner for 2023 and beyond. That's not like, I'm putting it off right now. We got to focus on 2023 and we'll get back to this next year. The and beyond is now an ellipse, and we have no idea. It could be next year. It could be 15 years from now when he's dead. I'm not trying to wish death upon the guy, but
but he is old. He's old. Yeah,
he is old. He's Buzz Lightyear right now and beyond. Like, what should we expect here at this point?
Right. Yeah, if I had to make a plea to the people who are content with this decision, let's summarize what the Angels look like from someone who's maybe not a fan. You are the team that has now wasted Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, who has had a big drug scandal that led to a player's death, who is owned by a guy who defrauded a city and is now under investigation by the FBI, who has failed miserably to plug holes in a team that needed pitching or needed offensive depth, who shies away from media coverage and basically BS's the fans with how he spends his money, who doesn't upgrade one of the oldest stadiums in the country, in North America, if we're going to include Toronto.
Hey, Toronto's getting upgraded right now. So Angels they fell farther down the list, everybody.
Yeah. So the Angels are not heroes in this story. They are bad guys run by a bad guy. A new owner would have brought a new culture and could have shifted that narrative. And now we're still the bad guys. The only thing that could change that is winning, and you still don't change the character of the owner. So there's still a black mark with all of that. And excuse me. And none of that perception is going to go away this season. There will still be news about Moreno and the minor league failures at both production and amenities, and he's going to be tied up in litigation that we will hear about as the season progresses. There's going to be a lot of rough Sam Blum articles coming out that, stories we know, probably stories we don't know already. So how is this fun? How has this been fun for anyone who's content? Baseball should be fun. And there are a lot of fans, I would say, and like you said, the majority of fans of this team who are impacted on this more than wins and losses, this decision. And sometimes it's hard to put into words like that disappointment that we're all feeling today. It's just majorly let down. And if you're content with the status of this franchise on the field and off the field, I have to call in the question where your head's at. Honestly, like, the writing is on the wall. The dumbest person can look at the Angels and see there's a problem. There's a big problem.
Absolutely. It's anybody who's content or happy or just okay, business as usual. Like, yes, it is business as usual now because we're about a month and a half away from spring training ball, and the season opening day 2023 is right around the corner. So yes, business as usual, but you cannot be content with everything David and I have talked about in this podcast. And it's mostly negative. There really isn't many positives that we can talk about Arte Moreno right now. How can you be content? Now, if Arte Moreno was the type of owner that wanted to sell the team because he was getting older and he just wanted to retire and kind of bask off in the sunset, and the Angels, I'm not saying have won a championship, but at least over the last decade, we're a playoff caliber team and we're in the playoffs. And even if they got bounced in the first round or second round, and even still, if they only had one championship like we do from 02, I think we would maybe have a very different perception of Arte Moreno. Mm-hmm. But with everything you've laid out, we don't. So anybody who is content or happy with Arte Moreno staying and not looking at this as a forward future thing for the Angels state of the franchise, I'm going to call BS. And I really want to have your head exam to see if you're truly an Angel fan, because you have to be in it for the comedy of it. You have to be in it for the comedy of what can the Angels do next. It's almost like Impractical Jokers, like what happened with a football reference, what happened with Kirk Cousins and the Vikings against the Giants. Throw it 3 yards to end your season. Like, I feel that's what those Angel fans are here for.
Yeah.
And this is not. You can be a hunk, a Halo hunk, all you want. That's fine. You could be a pessimist. You could be an optimist. Just, you have to have some realism in your brain in this.
I don't think these fans understand that our frustration, our pessimism, our anger comes from a place of love. It's like a parent. You're not going to let everything your kid does slide. Sometimes you're going to be a little upset. We care. That's why we're so mad. We want success for this franchise. We believe that this franchise should be more successful than it is. We believe it should be doing better than it is. We know how they can be better, and it irritates us that they're not taking the proper steps. And so we're going to vent those frustrations. You can say we're haters or pessimists or we're always too down on the team. I used to get that a lot. It's especially after 2010, coming into like the middle of that decade. Call a hater a lot, but I'd always be right. I'm like, the team's not making the playoffs. They're not doing the smart signings. Ownership's been lost. Sometimes being sometimes being a realist comes off as being a hater, but I truly believe that good comes from criticism. So like fans like us who take the level-headed approach here, it can't do any harm. I mean, how much worse can it get? So I think, if level heads actually prevailed, something good would come from this criticism. And I really truly did believe that was happening with Arte Moreno selling. I think he had heard the fan criticism because by all accounts, we didn't really expect his announcement to begin with. There were no indications that he was ready to sell. There were indications that the franchise was going downhill, sure, but there were no indications that he personally wanted to sell, except from the fan outcry. I mean, my last game that I went to was the Detmers no-hitter, and that was a full night of celebrating Ohtani, and it was just a really fun night at the ballpark, except for the one moment where they brought out Arte Moreno and a stadium that's completely full and cheering turned to boos. And this is during a time of the season where the Angels are winning and we're looking like a playoff team, and there are no bad vibes to be had. And still the man gets booed because I believe most people see the writing on the wall, like I said earlier. So I implore fans that go too much into this Halo honk mentality to understand that there is a healthy level to being upset right now and to wanting better for the team that you love, that you spend money on, your hard-earned money. Like, shouldn't you be, you're spending on jerseys and beer and tickets and parking, and you're giving this man your money? Shouldn't you be demanding like a good product in return? It's like, imagine you went to a burger joint and all you get are the buns, but you paid full price. That's what these fans are doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, this is great. I didn't need the patty. I didn't need the lettuce and tomato. The buns are fine.
It's like, no, you
that
have,
reaction is.
yeah, it's almost like I'm going to Beverly Hills to go shop at Rodeo Drive, but the 99-cent store at Rodeo Drive. Like that's
Right.
what it feels like. It nothing intersects in the proper way, and
It
that's
doesn't
the
make
biggest problem.
sense.
It doesn't make sense at the end of the day, and that's, I think, where us fans can get intertwined. The Halo honks and the realists have that knocking of the heads, is because we want better for the team. We don't want to enable the team into a full sense of reality, that participation award type mentality.
Sure. Right.
That those days are over. I'm never a fan of that. I want this team to win. Everybody talks about, and we all get frustrated at this. You're wasting Trout's career. You're wasting Ohtani's career. And as the years go on, it gets harder and harder to defend that based on the moves that are coming down from up top. The quote is always, a fish rots from the head. And right. Trout and Ohtani, for what they have done in their careers thus far, has been nothing short of amazing. And I know at the same time, not every player that steps on the field is going to get a World Series ring. But to a certain degree, you have to put your best foot forward and constructively criticize the team that those players are on to make them get to a higher level, to get that 1% better each and every day to become a champion.
Right. It hurts my heart when that argument about the wasting their years comes up, because there's truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, injuries play a factor, but if you actually built depth around your team, you probably soften the blow a little bit more. Like, there are years the Angels probably should have made the playoffs with like one or two more moves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about like a little bit before 2014 and around that time. I know with the Rangers, there were always those late season battles where a couple more wins in April would have meant the difference, you know? So right now they're too far gone. They've been too far gone to have that conversation. They haven't been close to being a playoff team. But again, that goes back to what's Moreno doing? What's he allowing of his GMs? And we see these GMs thrive in other spots. Epler in New York, and DePoto's actually had a pretty up and down, but right now he's at one of those ups in Seattle. So it's kind of hard to see their successes and then blame them completely for the problems in Anaheim. There is a root issue in Anaheim. There is a virus. I don't know if you're watching The Last of Us. Great show, by the way. Great game, my favorite game of all time. But it's there's this fungus inside the brain of the system that's just ruining everything. And it's that one little spore can do so much damage. And we are not just seeing it, we've been seeing it. I believe we will continue to see it, which sucks. I take no joy in coming on here and talking with you and being doom and gloom, but I'm not going to spin this and lie and say, oh, we'll be fine. I mean, even if they make the playoffs this year, I'm like, these are all one-year deals with a bad free agency class coming up next year, and no new focus on player development. So how do we know we can trust the players coming up to perform at the levels they need to perform at immediately, because there's no depth in the organization at the moment? There's just too many what ifs and not a system in place to cover those what ifs. It's just this is, you know, I'm a Jets fan, I'm a Clippers fan. Arizona football, when I was at school out there, I'm used to teams losing. This is the hardest challenge I've ever been faced with as a sports fan, is the last 24 hours, truthfully.
At the end of the day, the common denominator in everything that has happened with the Angels is Arte Moreno. He is in charge of the organization. He is the owner of the Los Angeles Angels. What are you going to do? We have boycott. Boycott is the only best way to do it.
I'm telling you. So my advice to anyone listening, watching, I stopped going to games. I know attendance has declined even after COVID. I'm sure he was expecting numbers to kind of go back up and be in the top 10 again in attendance. Didn't happen this last off season, and it's been trending down. They lose Ohtani, they're going to have no one at these games. Trout's not enough of a draw to fill the stands. But that may be what has to happen. Don't go to games. I mean, home and road, because owners do take splits, even the road team. So you go see them at Chavez Ravine and the freeway series. Artie's going to get some of that money. So don't go to games. Don't buy official merchandise. Protest the team out front, but park outside, not in the lot. Don't give him your $10 to park in the lot. We could talk as much crap as we want about the Dodgers, but those fans banded together against Frank McCourt, and now look at them. They have the World Series. Put an asterisk next to it or not, doesn't matter. They have their championship. I would have loved to be in their situation. They're perennial World Series contenders, all because the fans said we've had enough. If Angels fans unified like that, then we only have one more season of suffering. I guarantee you the attendance goes to Oakland levels this season. Artie's talking about selling in June, and then he opens the door back up. And we get what we want a little bit later, granted, but there has to be unity on this front. There has to be, we have to take control now. The ball is in our court. The man is obviously delusional. He's not gonna move off this. The and beyond statement scares the hell out of me. And it sucks. Yeah, you're gonna be away from your team, a team that we all love. And for me, I've rooted for 30 years. It's not an easy decision to make. And I'm not saying it should be, but at this point, the desperation, you have to decide, how desperate are you to have a winner? How desperate are you to have a stadium that you're proud of, to have an owner that you're proud of, a product in the field that you're proud of, a developmental system that you're proud of, that takes care of the players and continually puts a really good talent at the major league level, who treats international players with respect and domestic players with respect. How important is that to you? How important is the stadium experience and being proud of your team and wearing that jersey out with pride? Like, how important is that? And that's the point where I'm at, where I am publicly asking people to consider the ramifications of giving Arte Moreno your money.
Preach. That's going to be one of the direct days. And I love the comparison with the whole Los Angeles Dodgers and the Frank McCourt era, and the fans banded together, and look where they are now. Because in the grand scheme of things, I, as an Angel fan, would take 1 year of suffering if that meant Artie goes, a regime change happens, and even if there's another year of rebranding, remarketing, refixing this organization. So basically 2 years of mediocre to bad ball. And if that means there's better days ahead, I mean better decades ahead, you somehow retain Shohei Ohtani, and all these positives start to get into the mix, I am willing to suffer for maybe a year or two in order to get to the promised land at some point after
there is no reason we can't have a level of success or better as the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same market. It's a great place to play baseball, with a really awesome fan base, and a new owner could bring in more money and a culture change. There is no reason that we should not ask for that.
Yeah. And I think going forward, we already knew, as mentioned, there was 5 potential owners or groups that were going to submit bids to Arte Moreno. 2 of them were basketball owners. There was one from in the Japanese market and one from the LA Times. So those were your essential 5, and then there was a one wild card one that we won't know, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. But if Artie does sell, maybe he goes back to the well, brings those 5 people back, and it's a quicker process. Again, hindsight is 2020. The future is 2020 at this point. We don't know those specific details as of right now, but as what we do know right now, Artie is back for 2023 and beyond. We have to live with it, and we have to somehow ride the storm and find a way to make light of the situation and almost win in spite of Arte Moreno. Cheer for your Angels in spite of Arte Moreno, because even though there's boycotting and there's things that can be done, in our deep hearts between the two of us, we're still going to root for our Angels at the end of the day, maybe individually, maybe just Trout or just Ohtani, or everybody will have their own way of doing it.
Right.
And that's perfectly okay. When you're born and bred an Angels fan, you're going to have that, that love and feeling, as everybody says. But
I don't think there's a right and wrong way to feel your disappointment in this and how you go about it. It truly is. It's a tough situation for us fans. We've been put in a really tough spot.
Just don't be content. Don't be content and think that it'll get better. That's the one mentality I can't accept as a fan with my fellow fans or even fellow media or everybody else, because there have been writings on the wall. There's more negative than positive. If it was the other way around, then the conversation could be 100% different. But that's where we are entering 2023. Who thought this was going to be how we started off our 2023?
I'm not surprised. I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah, I had this was always a thought in the very, very back of my mind. I was hoping my instincts were wrong, but I prepared myself. So instead of being ultra angry and vicious, I'm more subtle and just numb to this situation right now. I think that's where my head and my heart feel with this whole predicament that the Angels are in right now. And that's going to last now into spring training. I'm looking forward to the World Baseball Classic because I can enjoy baseball with Angel players that will not be wearing an Angel uniform. I'm looking forward to Trout versus Ohtani, Patrick Sandoval against Mike Trout. Like, all these internal matchups are going to be so fun to watch.
Well, I'm gonna learn how to root against Ohtani, I guess. I'm
Yeah,
do a lot of that when he's in Dodger blue, right? So
this could be I hate to say, but this could be a wonderful precursor and a teaching lesson to us Angel fans. If Ohtani does leave and you're rooting for Team USA, you're going to have to vote against Shohei Ohtani. So you might have to be preparing yourself for the next 6 to 8 months of what could happen if Shohei Ohtani does not indeed stay in Halo Red. So we'll see what happens. Again, myself and David are going to be here through the entire ride of Angels baseball. We came into 2023 getting ready for this podcast thinking, it's going to be heavy Ducks, and in a way the travesty or just the ineptitude of what the Ducks season has been so far this year. Arte Moreno said, screw that, bait and switch. You're going to be talking about me on this day today.
It's pathetic. Even with how bad the Ducks have been, I still have infinitely more optimism with the future of that franchise than I do with the Angels with a decent roster this season.
Go support the Ducks. If you're an Angels fan who loves the Ducks, go support the Ducks. I know there's Angel fans that are Kings fans. Love your Kings. Do you. Go support the Ducks. Even though they are bottom 5 in the NHL right now, and not just the standings, but a bunch of stat categories, they have quality talent, good ownership. Go support them at Honda Center.
Listen, so for people like me and my dad and others, if you're getting rid of your season tickets for the Angels, maybe put that towards the Ducks if you don't have it. It's a great time out. Honda Center is an awesome experience. The team, even when they're not winning, they still have a lot of really fun players, and I truly believe they're a couple years away from fielding a Stanley Cup worthy type of roster with just oodles and oodles of talent. Just a lot of positives to look forward to, even if it's not this season. There's been mumblings that the old jersey logo is coming back full time, so you get some nice stuff to look at too while the game's being played. But I think, like you said, turn your attention towards the Ducks. It's a franchise worthy of your attendance, your support. They do things the right way for the most part, and yeah, hockey is just awesome to watch in person too. So if let's say you're not a big Ducks fan, but you're an Angels fan, I'm telling you, hockey is probably the most fun sport to see in person. Go support them. They're very close to Angels Stadium, so you don't have any excuses if you make your way out to the Big A a lot. Go support the Anaheim Ducks. They deserve it.
Absolutely. And that is the shameless plug presented by David and I on Katella Chronicles that covers Angels and Anaheim Ducks. Give yourself a round of applause there.
Yeah, I'm never ashamed to rep Anaheim.
I'll rep a little Ducks and Angels today, but this was bought at Honda Center, which means the money went to the Samuelis, not Arte Moreno.
That's what I contributed.
I contributed to the Ducks fund. But For myself, Dominick Lorenz, and David Goodkind, this was just another episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast, episode number 13. We got Buttercupped again. Arte Moreno is indeed staying on as the owner of the Los Angeles Angels for 2023 and beyond. It's going to be a wild and wacky season for the Angels. We've grown accustomed to that. It just is what it is. As of right now, the team is better as of today than it was at the end of 2022 with the additions of Renfroe, Anderson, Phillips, Urshela. You name them. Who knows? There could be more. There's rumors that the Angels are still looking at some relievers and some pitchers. We'll see what comes of that. But of course, you're going to want to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Katella_CHRON for all things Angels and Ducks. You can follow us on our website, katellachronicles.wordpress.com. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe to this podcast here on YouTube for all good things Katella Chronicles. But as we sit and we pray for better days, not only for our Angels, but for our Ducks as well, I'm Dominick Lorenz. That's David Goodkind. David, thanks for jumping on. Let's hope for better days.
Yep. Please.
Cheers to you. And we are the heartbeat of pro sports in Anaheim.